Heo hilo kaua he kauahi, hae kuhi kua o hau kuhi alo, a po mai lai au e pai a ka hulu konane, ki ina upolo e ka akau, he kaua ka he mai a ka lai, lele kawa me he lele vai pihi o lua hi I lawe, lele kawa me he lele vai pihi o lua hi I lawe, ngā kaua nau wane, ke ala e mia nei, I to pono e kaua lai ngā, hoi kaua nau wane, a papahi ka haliko a papane lele hua, papahi a ka haliko a papane lele hua, na ka hawa mona ke a kuuni o, na ki ahi mono loa kuku mole, kuala lai muli kua hivi I re nei ka mua nānui, ha mama o ka moku, I ngā kaua nau wane, ke ala e mia nei, I ka pono e kaua lai ngā, hoi kaua nau wane, a papahi ka haliko a papane lele hua, papahi ka haliko a papane lele hua, Heo hilo kaua he kauahi, he ola, he haloa I hilo e. Heo. Kono o Kalani Quiocho no hilo mai au, Papahānaumokuākea o Hawai'i, moku o Kiawe, moku o Umi, moku o Kalani o Kukunawa. Nohua ma Aiea, ma keia mokupuni, o Hana, ka uhahime, mai Iapana, mai Japan, my wife is from Japan. Helua o Kikikane, I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they might be coming soon. So mahalo for allowing me to be in this space. I was born and raised in Hilo, and my tutu man is Henry Allen Kahali Alalani Awai, also known as Papa Awai. And I was raised by this man and my tutu kela. My tutu kela is from Kahuai Puna and Va'ava'a. And my tutu man, Henry Papa, is from Kohoiki, which is also the birthplace of Papahānaumokuākea. So these two met and they raised their family in Hawaiian Program of Keaukaha, Hilo. So I'm 4th generation in Keaukaha. And my grandmother is the middle child of these two, and she's number 9 of 17 for a middle child. And she's also the namesake of my papa. She's Henrietta. And she met this man, one Puerto Rican man. When he was 4, he came over as my grandfather, John Gomes Miranda. And then my mother is Vanessa Leigh Miranda, and she met my father, Vernon Quiocho. And they lived on opposite sides of Hilo Bay. My mother grew up in Keaukaha. My father is from Manaʻo, the Filipino plantation side of Hilo. And they were high school sweethearts. I'm the oldest of 5. I have my youngest brother is Hanai. And I grew up on that lava coastline in Keaukaha. And so much of my upbringing, the best school that I ever had was that Aina. And that's my people, that's my Kukaniloko in many ways. And so I'm here today to share with you about my connection and our connection to a very, very significant place known as Papahānaumokuākea. And I'm a Native Hawaiian Program Specialist, that's my formal title. And basically, I work in the federal government, so we have management mandates and plans. And so my kuleana is to focus on all of our management activities and strategies that are focused on Native Hawaiian initiatives. And because we're a World Heritage Site designated for cultural and natural significance, I focus on all of the cultural heritage side of our management. I do really fun stuff. I kind of do a lot of different things. And I'm so grateful because all the things that I thought I wanted to do and never got to do fully in the ways that we think about them originally, I get to do in my job. I get to focus on Native Hawaiian education, Native Hawaiian driven research. And that's different because we have a research and education program, but I focus on what that OED driven, what are those inquiries that come from Kanaka. policy, the permits, the regulation side of our management. So Native Hawaiian rights and laws. Partnerships are the NOAA liaison to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. As you can see, we're co-managed. And also the fun part is integrating these Hawaiian concepts and values into the daily management of the monument. It's an awesome job, it's my dream job in many ways. And I'm so fortunate and grateful to have this put in at this time. I want to acknowledge this place as well, Kamōʻili, as I was reintroduced by Uwehi in Manaʻo. So I have this title for you, Ancestral Knowledge as the Conceptual Framework for Management, the Native Hawaiian Plan for Papahānaumokuākea. And so what I'll be talking to you about is a number of things, and talked about the aha, this idea of this cordage and how there are individual strands. And so this mo'olelo that I'll be sharing with you could be seen as just one strand. There's many ways to tell the story, but I'm going to focus on what I think would be best for this time and space. And so I'm going to focus on, this is my outline for our mo'olelo, the sequence of our story. I'm going to focus on Hawaiian cosmology and worldview and honing on the Kumulipo, and how the Kumulipo is actually based on the entire archipelago of Hawaii. And I'll break it down for you. Then I'm going to talk about the Hawaiian expansion period, get a little bit academic with you, and talk about how the northwestern Hawaiian Islands was really important for this time when our society was developing beyond that pre-time that Tom was referencing, into this stratified social hierarchy of chiefdoms. And it excelled in many ways. It was kind of the renaissance of our time, one of the first renaissance in Hawaiian society. Then I'm going to jump forward into the time of the what we consider the Hawaiian Renaissance of the 1970s, and talk about how that genealogy of Hokule'a is connected to Papahānaumokuākea and all of these expressions of aloha aina, and how we express aloha aina and our place and our genealogy and our connection to this place. And then from there, all of this ikekupuna, all of this ancestral knowledge, whether it be history or TEK, traditional ecological knowledge, or values, concepts, criteria, standards and principles for natural and cultural resource management, how we were able to take all of that and make a Native Hawaiian plan. So talking about conception and creation in something that's can be very, very intimidating or challenging, to take all of those things and put it in an agency management form. So we'll see how that goes. Something that hopefully you can see is aligned with what you're trying to achieve as well. So this is a beautiful collage of our indigenous peoples, some of our indigenous peoples, and I use this slide to say that indigenous peoples are intrinsically connected to their native lands, territories, and resources, so much that you can see their aina, their land, expressed physically in this tangible form. There is so much intangible heritage that is under this frame of outward expression, and that is where a lot of the richness can be actually experienced. This is really, really beautiful representation of the rest of the presentation. The IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, has an environmental and social management system. Within this, they have a standard on indigenous peoples, and it says, quote, "Many indigenous and traditional peoples inhabit a significant part of the Earth's most biodiverse regions, cultivate strong cultural and spiritual relations with their natural environment, have developed and often maintained traditional ecosystem management practices, and are holders of unique knowledge systems valuable for biodiversity conservation." This is just one perspective, honing in on that conservation aspect. But when we look at the Native peoples, one of the largest repositories of ike can be seen in the way, in their oral traditions. And in this slide, I share with you Mele Ko'inonoa, which can be described as creation chants or cosmogonic genealogy chants of Hawaii. Here listed, these are just some. The most well-known, I think, is Kumulipo. We also have Kalani Quiocho and Ororo. Kumulipo is interesting because it has strands of these genealogies attached to it in some way or form. That's what I've been told. And I'm going to hone in on Kumulipo a little bit more and show you how this creation chant
was formed and inspired by the entire archipelago of Hawaii. So the Kumulipo, we can think of it as two words, kumu meaning source or foundation, even teacher in some contexts, and lipo being that darkness. We can think of it also conceptually as a source of life. So we think about that creation and that genealogical origin. Its structure is seen here. Plainly, it's divided into two parts. Po and ao, which essentially means night, po, and day, ao. Night and day. Similar to what Tom had brought up, duality. Okay, honing in on that, on those teachings. Further, looking at a little bit level lower or deeper, there are 16 wa or eras of time. And so there are 8 wa or these chapters within po, and there are 8 within ao. And then if you reduce it to writing, there are more than 2,000 lines. I think it's 2,104 lines. And these are some of the lessons or content that we can identify or articulate in these modern ways. So we have the theory or origin of species and traditional ecological knowledge. And in ao, in the section of day, you'll see this litany of Hawaiian names and some ancestors that still, or families that still exist today. You see the names in this genealogical chant in their last names. And so this is the framework for the Kumulipo. Stretching from the east where the sun rises and gives birth to new life, and where the islands are volcanically birthed from the oceanic dome. This is the side of creation where the sun rises all the way to the west, in the small marginal islands where the sun sets and the islands actually return to their source. You can already see how this is the construct of life and death, of darkness and light. And we have this dividing line seen here, and it's reverently referred to as Kane, the dark, black, glistening, sacred path of Kane, patron god of the sun. Does anybody know what this line is commonly known as? This is the Tropic of Cancer. The Tropic of Cancer. So the Tropic of Cancer, we know from grade school that this is the northern extent of the sun's northern path. Yeah, nowhere north of this can you observe the sun directly overhead at zenith. We're merely scanning the sky, So on the longest day of the northern hemisphere summer, about June 21st, you can observe the sun directly on this path. And what's really exceptional about this path is that it intersects with a particular island known as Mokumanabana, the island of exponential manas. And so with this line and knowing what this line represents as far as the sun's interaction with the earth, you can see how this divides the archipelago into night and day. And this reinforcement of these ideas of mortal islands that have large physical form that are still being birthed out of the womb, this earth, until it passes into a transition phase where they're eroding back into the sea where they came from. So this is merely a cyclical representation of our religion, our spirituality, and where we build the constructs for our culture. The islands beyond this line, Kalani, they're small and marginal compared to this island. We can think of them as taking on spiritual form. And when the voyagers talk about these islands, they do take on magnificent and epic features. For instance, the lagoons of the islands were talked about in mythology as having godlike abilities, that they could float in the sky. And for the voyager, this was an important indication of land, because when you see the reflection of the lagoon on the bottom, the foundation of the cloud, we knew that land was in that direction, but that land was actually just a few feet above the sea. So this was a way, mythology, these kinds of epic stories were ways to capture knowledge in a way that was meaningful, powerful, and relevant to them. It's still relevant now in many, many ways. So looking even deeper, talking about the dynamic between Papahānaumokuākea and the organization of Kumulipo, we have these names of the islands. So when I talked about Kumulipo being divided in Papahānaumokuākea and how there were 8 wa in Po and 8 wa in ao, you have 8 large main Hawaiian islands recognized being in the region of ao. And and you have 8 small atoll shoals, islets within Po, beyond Mokumanamana, which sits on Kealapoli Volcano in the Tropic of Cancer. So this is the organization, the framework for the Kumulipo, our creation story. When I realized this, it kind of blew my mind to see that all of our ike was embedded on the land, but at the same time it made sense. So even though it was new, it wasn't a surprise because of all the foundational knowledge that we have. And I'll talk about this a little bit more further down. So transitioning into the expansion period, we see in the Kumulipo within Va 8 and 9 that there are 4 prominent ancestors that are born. So within Po, generally what's happening is we acknowledge the Horapala as being the first biological ancestor, and what seems like a following of evolution, these more evolved and sophisticated animals are born until you reach this. So the last being born before man or any anthropogenic being is born is the bat, the Opeapea. The Opeapea is a Kinoloa Kanaloa. Kanaloa is known as being the guardian from the transition between light and day. And there is another guardian, counter guardian, that is female on the other side to beckon that transition. But these 4 progenitors are born in this order. So we have Laʻilaʻi, a wahine, as Tom was referring to our wahine's role in society. The second one, she's mortal. Ki'i is a mortal man born second. Kani is a god, he's born third. And Kanaloa is a god born fourth. This is a really interesting birth order in many, many different ways. Long story short, what's happening here is that Ki'i, Kani, and Kanaloa want to gain mating rights in Laʻilaʻi, and they do this in many different ways. What happens is that Ki'i actually wins. And what's interesting about Ki'i and Kani is the names and how they're actually recognizing their being mortal and God. So think about duality, yeah? So Kanaloa, we can exclude him for now, but what happens is Ki'i figures out how to win mating rights over, over Kani. What he does is he actually creates an image of Kani, an image of the god, in which the god can be captured in and housed. And he's able to manipulate that image of the god. And so this is a really important lesson, is that man does not exist without God, and God cannot exist without man. It's a different way of thinking in Hawaiian religion. There's a reciprocity that happens in this story. So Ki'i actually has mating rights over Laʻilaʻi. He has the senior lineage. Kani, being second, has the junior lineage. And what's interesting about the way that this unfolds is that Ki'i, his name means image of God. Ki'i, who is a mortal man, his name means image of God. Yet Kani, who is a god, his name means mortal man. Can you see the juxtaposition? Yeah, it's interesting. And that's why it was told over and over. These are the lessons that unfold within this saga. So we have the law of primogeniture, which basically means firstborn rights, the senior lineage. We see this unfolding within the chiefdoms. Royal endogamy is basically strategic gain to make sure that your offspring has more or equal mana than to you. And then religious use of anthropomorphic images. These are the people that are endemic, if you will, to Mokumanamana. They were found only on Mokumanamana. So these statues, they're about, they could be as much as this high off the table to this tall. We're small, but these are the images that Ki'i created to encapsulate Kane's essence inside. And that's how he was able to manipulate what was going on and win mating rights in Laʻilaʻi. Isn't that interesting? Oh my goodness. And every time I tell it, it's like, wow. This is Kane. This is Kane in every way. It's the round circle of the sun, patron god of the sun. It's the plump lips, he represents water. It's the cupped ears, like the Kalani. It's the kuno stature when you're doing ceremony. He has a arched back. He's phallic, Kane. He represents basalt rock because it's a conduit of fresh water, which is related to the sun because of the orographic effect. This is Kane in every form. This is Kane. This was taken from Hulu Manamana Kikiloi 2012. This is a representation of the sun's northern advance over Hawaii, beginning about May 16th at South Point, Hawaii, Kalani. And as you can see, because we're a sphere, it kind of slices smaller and smaller as you get more north. So what we infer is that on these sun paths throughout the year, ceremonies were conducted. So we can see that on these lines there were also heiau of different forms, whether they're called marae or inu, or ceremonial structures aligned on these paths, more or less. And they shifted over time. And that was one of the reasons why they traveled to Mokumanamana, was to calibrate time. This had practical use because you could predict season changes, time, right? And this was a really, really important aspect of gaining mana, Mokumanamana Island of exponential mana. Because back then, can you think about the amount of mana that you would have if you could predict these things? So think back in the day. The technology we have now we take for granted because it's just normal. But the technology of that time was similar to what we're doing in space. Yeah, being able to predict celestial movements in the sky. That is godly knowledge. So that was the opportunity for our chiefs to gain mana by having this knowledge. So there was this boom that happened in Hawaiian society. So because to be able to provision these voyages, you had to have very, very structured society that had these expertises that advanced really, really broadly. So you see here, this is Herb Kahn in all of his illustrations, but this is a representation of just the amount of economy and culture that was happening at this time. And some of the finest arts are recognized from this time: our featherwork, our matting, our la'ala'o practices, and our sailing, definitely. So going back to here, I want to share a little bit more about Nihoa and Mokumanamana and how our kupuna interacted with this space. So you can see Nihoa is halfway between Kauai and Mokumanamana. The function of this island was to be a stopping post to get to Mokumanamana. So these voyages were arduous, and so this island is much larger than Mokumanamana, has more resources, and so it was a staging ground. Mokumanamana is the ceremonial site. It's basically a temple in the ocean, and it's actually Wākea that creates the temples on this island, Wākea. So that's part of our namesake, Papahānaumokuākea. So Wākea actually learns how to make particular structures on this island in He'eia, where he's washed out to sea. And then he finds himself in this particular area where Mokumanamana is, and his kahuna who is with him tells him, Wākea, you need to make this heiau in the middle of the sea. And he does this with a hand motion, his left and right hand, forming this island, this island temple in the middle of the sea. But we also know, for those of you who know about traditional Hawaiian society, we know that the kahuna and the ali'i had this reciprocal relationship. It was codependent. You can kind of think of it as a church and a state. Yeah? And so Nihoa has another name. Nihoa Puipuipuone. This is a type of kahuna that points to a particular place where a heiau should be built. So we think of the island as a position in our society. So Nihoa was the kahuna that was pointing to where this island temple needs to be. And Mokumanamana is the ali'i, the one that actually has the agency to gain mana for the la'ui. Can you see that in the aina? This is Nihoa. This is a 900-foot facing cliff to the north. It's about 0.66 square kilometers. It is definitely the tallest. It's the first immediate beyond Kauai, and has a number of archaeological sites, more than 80. But this 80 is basically abstract. It's sometimes it can be a particular stone that's numbered. Sometimes it can be a complex agricultural site. But it's robust. In what you see kupuna everywhere. This is an agricultural terrace. The island is super steep on the south shore. It's like an amphitheater. So they created these terraces to be able to have standing soil to grow wala, kumara, sweet potato. So this was the staging ground. At one time, it's thought that there were about 100 people that were able to live on this island. 0.66 square kilometers. It's like Rabbit Island, Banana, by Makapu. But they were very resourceful. What's different between this island and Mokumanamana is that the the archaeological repository here is more agricultural and habitation sites in nature, where vice versa, it's Manaʻo is more ceremonial in nature. So these are some of the sites that have been documented, only documented, and there's probably more. This is an outdated map. And then I'm going to show you Mokumanamana. This is Mokumanamana in the distance. We acknowledge 5 pu, or 5 hills, and these are the 5 fingers of Wakea in this creation of this island temple. But this island has a east-west orientation, and this is really significant because of the sun's path. And so all of the heiau are on this spine of the island. And so you can imagine that ceremony was conducted from an east-west direction following the sun during the longest day of the year, about June 21st. And they look something like this. These are mana. These are digits. We also call fingers mana lima. Mana being exponential mana. So there's lots of reinforcement of this concept. There's an idea that these were calibrator or indicators, for calibrating time. So kind of like ticks on a clock or a compass. There's also this idea that the ceremony involved the rising of the sun and falling of the sun, the movement of the sun during different times of the year, in which the shadow of these mana would fall on top of the mo'i. And so this shadow that would fall on the mo'i was actually representing the shadow of the sun. How do you create the shadow of the sun? Mana. Create the shadow of the sun. And have you ever heard, if a ali'i shadow falls on you, you must die? So this idea of mana and the shadow is important in this ceremony, in which the mo'i would culminate all this mana in this one particular time. Can you imagine the amount of intention that was taken for this one moment, for the whole entire nation? It gives us hope to know what we can do in the future if we really focus our attention. So these are some of the things that happened during during the expansion period. This ceremony is known as the aha, this building of the cordage. Tom had talked about aha being a cord. This is similar to our contract. So different peoples have different types of contract. Some people in Native America have beads. They string beads together from each other's communities, and this is a commitment to one another. This is our contract, if you will. So each individual strand represents maybe a li'i or a lineage. And so creating this cordage in this ceremony sealed this commitment for many different things. What was happening during this time was this practice of constructing temples and reconstructing temples. We can think of this as pilgrimages, following in the footsteps of your ancestors. So being able to build and rebuild, you were doing what your kupuna did, and so you're recreating history. You're recreating history. Coordination of rituals. So talking about how the whole Laui, the whole Hawaii, was coordinated in these rituals, even though they didn't have these types of communications that we have today. It was so coordinated. This intensification of ritual performance, as I said, you have to be very specific about timing. And then, excuse me for the typo, but the increase in types of offerings and sacrifices starting to expand at this time because of the expansion period and what they were able to offer. I'm going to go up to the Hawaiian Renaissance. So we think about Hopule'a as being this icon for the Hawaiian Renaissance, rightly so. Another thing that was happening at this time was this fight for this other icon, and this is Kanaloa, this is Olave. And this is really iconic during that time too. This is a time where some of our people were characterized as being the angry native outside, pounding on the door saying, "Let me in, I have a right to," and you can fill in the rest. So many things. But this is different than what we're experiencing now in Papahānaumokuākea. 40 years later, being an extension of this time, we're now at the table. We're expressing aloha aina in different ways, whether it's through our ulelo, through our research in Mupepa, through our research, through all of the different things, our halal, our hula practices. You can see all of these different things happening within the labu, within Hawaii. And this is a really awesome thing, such as the map that Tom had shared with us. These are all expressions of aloha aina. An extension of that is the way that Papahānaumokuākea was born. On the left, this is a 20,000 about 20,000 people marching down Kalakaua Avenue in the early 2000s. I was a part of this march, and we were wearing red shirts that said, Hui Kopono, Justice for Hawaiians. And on the back, some of you may have been there, on the back there was a list of things that we wanted protection for. Most of them were in Hawaiian, and I recognized it. Maʻo Wakuloa, Ho'olawe, Ikikupona. And then there was this Northwestern Hawaiian Islands. And mine was like, boom. What? Like there was a big void in my mind about the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands. It being in English was one thing, but thinking beyond Kauai, I didn't think about that space as Ainapuna. And here we are, 20,000 people marching for this place. And I was like, what is this about? And that was a planting of this huli for me, planting of this seed for me. So this is what happened during this time. This is Uncle Buzzy Agard and Auntie Tammy Hart meeting President Clinton at the time, where he announces the designation of this long name, this protected area, the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands Coral Reef Ecosystem Reserve. So this place has 70% of coral in the United States. These kupuna were fishermen, they're Aina people, and they fought for the protection of this place. Some of the justification I've heard from the kupuna is that, yes, they acknowledge the overthrow. Yes, it's illegal. Yes, 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 we acknowledge that justice is needed. We need to use the tools that we have now to protect our Aina, because that is what our sovereignty is based on. It's Aina. And these are the tools we have now. And let's participate in this kind of public engagement. So they did, and this is what happened. In 2000, this was designated around the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands. So Papahānaumokuākea was designated in 2006. It's the same area, just a different designation. And it was designated expressly for its array of exceptional natural and cultural resources. And in this, all of this expression, we have Native Hawaiian significance, we have significance to the Battle of Midway, to whaling industry, and all of these things that are represented up there. It is the largest conservation within the United States, one of the largest in the world. And there's, what you don't see here is all of the rich biodiversity. There's some in the deep sea, the seamounts. Most of the site is underwater, which makes it also significant, because UNESCO, the United Nations Education, Science, and Cultural Organization, designated it in 2010 as a World Heritage Site for its natural and cultural. So it's the first and only mixed UNESCO World Heritage Site in the country, whether you consider that Hawaii, United States, or both, or none of the above. But UNESCO designated this the first cultural seascape as well. First cultural seascape, which is really, really awesome for us. So this is the boundaries of Papahānaumokuākea. The inner part is the original designation of the monument, where it's 50 nautical miles from any emergent land. And then the expansion in 2006 by President Obama took parts of the original boundary out to 200 nautical miles. You can see its size in relation to the contiguous United States and the Pacific, but it is 3/4 of the length of our Paʻaina. It's about 1,200 nautical miles long. It has 12 islands, atolls, those systems, and it's remarkable in many ways. These Hawaiian names are names that were taken from the Kai'aikawaha genealogy. There are several other Hawaiian names. Those names were given at a time when we didn't know these names. So these are kupuna names. So we have two sets. We have Kawakaliko names, and we have modern Hawaiian names, which is awesome because it tells about our relationship with these places over time. This is our co-management framework. We're co-managed from the top. There's 4 agencies as trustees. There's the State of Hawaii, the Department of Interior, the Department of Commerce, and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Within those agencies, there's 4 agencies that represent them at the Senior Executive Board. We have the Department of Land and Natural Resources, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and OHA. Within those agencies, the day-to-day management is through the Monument Management Board. So each of the agencies within the Senior Executive Board, the second one, has 2 agencies to represent them on the MMB, the Monument Management Board, except OHA. OHA represents itself. And I'm with the Whale Tail, the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. So in 2008, In 2008, in 2006, the monument was designated. In 2008, we created a monument management plan. In the monument management plan, there are 22 action plans, 2 of which are focused on Native Hawaiian initiatives. The Native Hawaiian Culture and History Action Plan and the Native Hawaiian Community Involvement Action Plan. It was in this document that it was identified that we needed to have a step-down plan or an additional plan to this that focused on Native Hawaiian management. And so in 2010, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries went out to the community over 2 years to 5 of the main Hawaiian islands to get manaʻo and ike about this Native Hawaiian plan. 2 years. Some of the soft goals for the plan development can be seen here. So we needed it to be recognized as a conventional management plan, as agencies would have to send this up to DC, it had to be vetted. It also needed to incorporate place and culture as the foundation, being the Native Hawaiian plan. But at the same time, it needed to be accessible because the managers needed to know how to use this plan. So culturally rich, yes, but we needed to be able to interpret these concepts in a way that managers could access it. And then, of course, again, it resonates with the Native Hawaiian community. So it's 2019, yeah, so it's been a while, and we haven't finalized the Native Hawaiian plan yet, for many different reasons. But the really, really challenging part of this plan has been, how do you take this conventional way of planning, this Western or not Hawaiian way of planning, and how do you infuse it with these cultural values, these concepts, these principles, these standards, in a way that allows it to be true to its identity. So that was really hard. So the first version, if you will, of the plan would follow this conventional framework of having goals and values and strategies, but it was really hard framework to fit some of those Native Hawaiian initiatives into. Another version of the plan was based off of mo'olelo and oli, so these oral traditions. And when they tried to fit it into a strategy, goal, conventional way of thinking about planning, that was really hard, and it took managers down different rabbit holes. So what we have right now is this version, soon to be completed within a year, that synthesizes all of these soft goals and much, much more. And I'm going to show it to you. This is one of the concepts that I want to show that we incorporated into the plan, but I want to remind you about the Papahānaumokuākea He Kumulipo framework as well. That's really, really important in the way that we organize the plan. So this is a schematic of a celestial sphere. So in the middle, we put that va'a there, or hokulea. So this is the surface of the ocean, so we can think of that oval as the horizon. So the space above becomes the sky. These are the stars, and that's an artistic image of the Papahānaumokuākea or Hawaii in the sky. In this orientation, po is actually the ocean below, and ao or day is the orientation above, the top part of the celestial sphere. So you can see night and day, and this is a 3D arrangement. So our kupuna, the va'a was a sacred space as well, similar to a heiau. It allowed them to project themselves into the celestial regions and interact with these godly bodies to be able to interact and predict where they were and where they were going. So the heiau, if you can think about a bird's eye view of a heiau, maybe it's a four-cornered heiau, think of it as a map, or even how we use GIS today. It was the technology of the time. Yeah, so it was a manageable space that they could model the universe and predict these things. That was the technology of their time. So similar, the va'a did the same thing. So on the horizon, this was this space where we recognized that the kukulu o kahiki, the pillars of kahiki, actually supported our world. So kukulu o kahiki, the pillars of kahiki. There are 4, but I have 5 here, and I'll tell you why there's 5 later. These kukulu were joined at the horizon, and it's at the horizon that they're uniting, but also separating po and ao in different times. So our kupuna, or the navigators, were able to pierce the sky through the horizon. This was their ability through this space. And so predicting the sky was an important feat that they were able to accomplish. So we use these concepts to create a framework for the Native Hawaiian plan. And as you superimpose the Papahānaumokuākea on this plan, it's geospatially referenced with Hawaiian worldview and the concept of light and dark, man and nature, culture and nature, and different things. But the kukulu, or the pillars, you can see here are the structures going across. Each pillar, each kukulu, has 4 strategies. The middle one is different. This is the ho'okui, this is the zenith. This is the position right in the middle of this dome that the sun passes directly overhead at Mokumanamana on the longest day of the year. So this is the place that the kukulu, the connections of the kukulu at the horizon, have to pass through. So they come up from the horizon and they stitch together. This is the point where the kukulu are connected within awa. Okay? So what we think about in this orientation is that this is generally our education and outreach. This happens in the main Hawaiian Islands. You can think about it as a capacity building. You can think about next generation projects and programs. This is our constituents, our partnerships. This is our advisory councils. This is how we meet the community. And you can see how that aligns with the concepts of awa and mortality, where people live. As we move into Po, this is about our cultural connection and managing the cultural landscape of the place, both culture and natural resources. And this is about the research that occurs in this area, but also how you demonstrate expertise. That's why it's called ho'ike, in harnessing that ike. So you can see how this is very place-based and aligns with the notions and concepts of Po. And this middle section, this ho'okui, where everything passes through, this is our management, our policies, our programs, the governance of Papahānaumokuākea, similar to how Mokumanamana functioned in traditional times. So this is the place that facilitates the interaction of knowledge systems, and that's why on the flanks of this plan, we put Keala, or the pathways, recognizing Keala Polihiwa Kane, the sacred blacklisting pathway of Kane, patronat of the sun. And so this connectivity, if you look at a management scenario, you can follow this across in either direction. So say for instance, we have monk seal conservation occurring up here, and we have cultural practices associated with those animals. We have the research that occurs with them. There are permits and policies and regulations that are pili to them, that are related to them. And then we have advisory councils advising us about this, but also consulting with the Native Hawaiian community about our conservation efforts. And then we have education that's, the content is the conservation work that we're doing within Po. So all of this has connectivity, and we recognize that what we do up there has application down here and should be informed, and vice versa. So what we do up there should be an extension of what we do down here and vice versa. So I'm about to conclude, but we've basically created these are parts of the plan. We've created these images so that people can gain access into the Hawaiian worldview, and we're aligning these cultural constructs with traditional or contemporary management and planning, design, and implementation. So you can see the path of the sun here. We're trying to use that as an implementation model, being the idea of actually conceiving a project, implementing, and evaluating a project. This idea of cyclical process and iterative process and planning. These are the different meanings for each of the pillars, and the ho'okui in the center, the meanings and what we're trying to achieve, the guiding principles and the desired outcomes for each of the pillars. And as I showed you before, these are the strategies that level deeper within the plan. So to conclude, and just aligning with some of the manaʻo for today, connection, conception, and creation, these are some of the things I wanted to conclude with. Cultural constructs have practical application if we allow it to. We can see its relevance to today. We can make it manifest, make it real for us today. So So using mo'olelo and mele for planning and design is a methodology. If we look at it, we can use its structure, we can use its information, the content. We can also use the way, the pedagogy of the mele and the mo'olelo. Some of the mele and mo'olelo actually are instructions of how to conduct certain ceremonies or practices, but they're encoded in a way that our kupuna understood, and these techniques of being able to transmit knowledge. So by engaging in mo'olelo and mele, we can see that kupuna at that deeper level, and then bring that relevance into today, to all. Traditional means now too, so we have to think about it as an extension of the past. So one of the kupuna told me, I am the culmination of all my kupuna. So I am the culmination of all my kupuna. And that's a powerful statement to think about, that we're not just singular, we're not a unit, but we're definitely part of this genealogy. And so thinking about traditional is really, really important, and our kuleana to this word and how we use it is important. Sometimes we think only in the past, and that's for them, and that was then, and that's different from now. But traditional also has relevance if we allow it to for today. I love that you did that activity at the beginning and talked about history, because it allows you to see where we've come from. And this idea, I think about it from the canoe's perspective in triangulation and knowing where you're at. So knowing where you came from, the island that you came from, is really, really important. Being able to, in your mind, attach yourself to this island, give you a reference point. The island that you're going to next is another important indicator of where you're at. And so attaching yourself to that place is important too. And then knowing where you're at through the stars and your interaction, your relationships on that canoe is the third point. You can triangulate that time, space, to know exactly where you're going. What's interesting with this is, as well, in the way that it's worded, the time in the front and the time in the back, is that it's dependent on which way you're facing. So Hawaiian thought about how we traverse time is that we're looking, in some cases, we're looking to the east and walking backwards. So we're following the path of the sun, but we're looking to the birthplace, to the rising of the sun, to know where we're coming from. We already know where we're going. And it's so interesting that you can change your perspective, and that you can have new understandings about where you're at and where you're going. And with that, I just wanted to leave you with the name song of Papahānaumokuākea.
Malama kalanuia kani kai hakeha Bakau ki kukunai ka ili kai ona kai e walu Ike makawalu ka ueano ine ona uwalu Kana noa amna wala nohri ka moa nanui A kai ka makani ole kua au ike kai Ono kalu o kai moa nei ke kape e ukai o ka pulei O kui ka lulua e ke alo anonu o mukumalu Manu o kui ka ahui he ala ka ina ka la ui O hina pu koa, o hina pu hala koa O hina pu, o hina I ka malawei Ua o luku ke kola lo ka himu kala Kia I e ka a kala tuhi oga Anau ka pea puka ka pea I ke kai Ina I ka ina Ono I ka huno ka paakei Mano ka ike liku o koko o a kanaloe Ko I luo I no ka leku leku O kuluhi Hano hale ka aina ukunao na ukule No Papahānaumokuākea la Inoa